Walk your talk. Thank you, Shelley, because that's exactly what we need to do. That's exactly what this entire life is about, is walking our talk. And here we start this morning by studying some of the laws that have actually ruled our country and you know, have set the standard for morality in many parts of the world. And what we're talking about this morning, though, goes beyond morality. It goes beyond what those 10 commandments say. And before we get into the talk about the 10 commandments, I want to reiterate one of the things that these commandments overall are trying to tell us. And it may not look like it on the surface, but as we go beneath the surface, we will find that there are many lessons in these 10 commandments that go way beyond just those things in the outer. And so the first thing I want to talk about is, since God is all, God is expressing in everything as everything, including us. And I hate to tell you this, but Cecil B. DeMille did us a great disservice when he did that scene from the 10 Commandments where God is writing with his finger upon the tablets. It is great cinematography, but it's very poor communication, because what he is saying is that there's something supernatural going on here. And what we want to look at is what really happened up on that mountain. What really happened? Well, the first thing that we know is that there have been people looking for Mount Sinai for hundreds of years, and they haven't found it yet. They're not sure where Mount Sinai was. But I can tell you this, that Mount Sinai represents that high state of consciousness that we all visit once in a while, and that is where our inspiration comes from. That's where all of the divine ideas that come to us come from. They come from that high place in consciousness, otherwise known in the Old Testament as Mount Sinai. And we realize, too, that this narrative of Moses was really a spiritual experience that he had. He was inspired on that mountaintop, and he came down with those 10 commandments from that divine center within him. That's where it came from the divine. That divine that is everywhere present and that we have within us, and all we have to do is tap in. Just tap in to it. Because our humanness often covers it up to the point that we do not realize it. In fact, I would say that most of us, for most of our lives, had never even heard of it. And so, when we talk about these experiences, we see that if we look at simply the words, the literal meaning, we miss so much, because there is a spiritual meaning that means much more. Because of the cliche of the big man out there, we repeatedly lose the sense of what we really and truly are. The 10 Commandments are a basis of morality. They are the basis of the things that we know that we should not do. And we know we shouldn't do them because we suffer as a result. We know this. We've experienced the suffering. We know that if we do not do these things in the moral world, that society falls apart, that things do not go as they should. And so we accept them not as a spiritual law, but simply as the rightness of doing the right thing, of being there for others in the way that we can all live together in society. And so the great need of every person is to understand their inherent spiritual nature. And let me tell you, this morning, I'm doing you an injustice, and I have to tell you that, because this is 10 commandments, and I'm doing them in 15 minutes. There is so much more to them than what you will hear. I hope that I am just whetting your appetite so that you will go and study more, because there is so much more. Beyond morality is a whole new dimension of metamorality. Eric Butterworth says that in How to Break the 10 Commandments. So I think some of you were shocked last week when I said, next week we are going to break all 10 commandments down. Because that's what we're doing. We're breaking them down and we're looking at them from a new perspective, from a new point of view. So I hope this talk will help you move forward through your own wilderness of the growth experience. You know, we all go through those wilderness periods, but those wilderness periods are so valuable. They are so valuable because we learn so much if we are willing to listen. And so, as we move through those experiences, we do come to a time when we find ourselves in the promised land, the promised land of spiritual fulfillment and human achievement. So, let's get to work this morning and let's go through these commandments and see what we can glean from them to find out exactly what they mean. In Exodus 22-3, it says, I am the Lord your God who has brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. To have no other gods before the one is to have an awareness of the allness of God. The basic one in the process of manifestation becomes I am. I am. Much has been written about the great I am. The I am is simply being in the process of being you. Thus, it is significant that the first commandment begins with, I am the Lord your God. The message means that I am is the Lord of your being. I am is the Lord of your being. The key to Moses' law was the I am. That was the real key. And the key to Jesus' message was the same. It was the I am. Jesus said, I didn't come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it, to help us see the spirit of the law, to help us see that there is so much more than doing the literal part of the law. As you remember, he had a really hard time with the scribes and the Pharisees because they were so really intent on doing the letter of the law, and they were good at it, and they knew it, and they thought that they had made it because of that. And when Jesus said, sorry, you missed the point, it didn't go over real well. You shall have no other gods before me refers not only to the physical things, but also to our human tendency to judge according to appearances. We all do this. Well, I shouldn't say we all. I've heard people who have at memorial service who say, I never heard them say a bad thing about anyone. I would sure love for someone to say that about me. Unfortunately, they won't. Because in our humanness, we make mistakes. But the best thing we can do is catch those mistakes. I made one last week. It was a good one too. Boy, I mean to tell you. And the minute it came out of my mouth, I thought, oh my gosh, look what you just said. Look what you just said. That is not the way we look at the first commandment. Not at all. It is this negative thinking that throws us into mental and emotional turmoil. We say things like, you might as well face the facts, that this situation is hopeless. Have you ever thought that? Maybe you didn't say it out loud, but you thought it. You know, when we do those things, when we say those things, when we feel those things, we are not meeting that commandment. The purpose of the first commandment is to live in the knowing that we are one with the one and in the one. And that we are the light of the expression of God in the world. And so we constantly work in that direction. But we are human too. So we forgive ourselves when we make a mistake, and we move on to the next thing. We move on to the next thing. The second commandment is Exodus 20:4-6, where it says, you shall not make yourself a graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above or that is in earth beneath or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. Well, when we see anyone as other than God itself, we have made a graven image. We have made a graven image of in our minds. And here are a few of the graven images that we might make. That is just the way he or she is. He or she has a weak character. Some people get all the breaks. That person is just a born loser. When we say and think those things, and I have to say, it goes beyond saying. Remember what Jesus said? If you think it in your heart, it's the same as doing it. Well, that makes it even worse, doesn't it? This is not helpful. This is not helpful. But actually, it truly is. It truly is helpful because we catch these things early while they're still in our mind as thoughts before they come out of our mouths. So we do not spread that around. You see, the main thing about saying these things out loud is because we give them to other people. And when we do that, we are not acting from our or their highest and best. And so we go on with our fixed attitudes into the very fabric of our subconscious mind when we say those things. You know, we have to be very careful. We have to be very flexible so that as we learn these things, we change. We don't just know them, we change them. We change them in the outer world. And so we move on now to the fact that what we can do is when we actually practice these things, we have the possibility of limitless life. And it is our responsibility and privilege to give birth to that new way of being within ourselves. And as we do that, we will find that our life improves exponentially in so very many ways. There are so many ways. And so we move now to Exodus 27. It says, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Well, profanity certainly is very prevalent these days, and it would be good if people learned to communicate without the use of swear words. And but I have to say that it is much more important that we learn to communicate positively and creatively. And this is what the third commandment is basically about. The Lord refers, as I've said many times, often, not always, but often in the Bible as the law. And the commandment simply says that there is great power in the word of truth, and that if you misuse the word or direct it in negative ways, you will have to pay the piper. This is called the law of cause and effect. And most of us are still under that law. We're all striving to go beyond that law of cause and effect, the law of grace. But most of us aren't there yet. And so that's how we learn. The law of cause and effect is for our benefit. It is strictly for us because it teaches us to everything we do, to everything that we say, there is an effect. And that effect is absolutely right on. You know, there are no idle words in consciousness. None. None. And the conscious mind does not discriminate. It takes everything you say as the gospel truth. And you may say, but I didn't really mean that. I was just kidding. The subconscious mind doesn't take a joke. And I find that when we say those things, we're really not joking. We're really wanting someone to get a message. We just don't really want them to think that we're bad for saying it. Got that? Did you get that? That the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between thoughts that are casual and thoughts that are causal. So make a commitment to break down the third commandment and to call yourself by the name of the Lord in the right and wise and consistent use of I am. Exodus 28. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. The key to the fourth amendment lies in the root word Shabbat, which means to rest. It means intermission, to take a break, to detach from exertion. And the emphasis is on the rhythmic flow of the universe. You know, we do something and then we rest. We do something and then we rest. That was kind of my day yesterday. I was cleaning out a closet. And if you can imagine Fibber McGee's closet, that was this closet. And I was cleaning it out, and it filled up the entire room. And as I cleaned it out, I did as much as I could, and then I rested. I sat down for a while, and I just rested. And then I would get back up, and I would do some more. And then I would rest some more. And it's still not done. But tomorrow or today, maybe this afternoon, maybe, I'll get to finish it. At least I'm hoping so. But this is what this is about. And Jesus said that the Sabbath was not made for man, but the man was not made for the Sabbath, but Sabbath was made for the man. And of course it comes out of the Old Testament scripture where on the seventh day God rested. And so it is important that we rest as well, not only physically, but within our own minds. How many of you think? Does your mind just go think all of the time? I don't know about you, but once in a while I say, just please be quiet. I am just so tired of listening to you. And when I get to that point, I usually try to take some time to just sit down and be still and to move into meditation with no thought, because that's the only place where I can really find any peace. Is to do that. But often we think that these thoughts are so important that we can't possibly take a break from them. I mean, after all, some great thought may come along and we will miss it. Well, if you've noticed your thoughts lately, probably not going to happen. And if it's really important, it'll come back to you. They always do. If it's really a divine idea, it won't be lost. You will have it. But take some time. It says, metaphysically interpreted, this can be interpreted as, when you have put your mind and heart and hands into a project, then let it go. And let God breathe life into it that it may become a living form. Sometimes we just worry these projects to pieces. And we overwork them. I find that in painting. When I paint, there is a point where I better stop. Because if I don't, what I'm producing then becomes mud. If you've ever done any artwork at all, you know that you can overwork a piece. I have a piece right now that I'm going to have to totally, completely cover up and start over because it just looks like a big blob. And it's the same thing with any projects that we do. Get in tune with life's universal rhythm through regular periods of creative rest. And let God breathe through you. Allow God to breathe through you, just as God breathed through the first human. Not just once in a while, but on a regular basis. Because it's a constant rhythmic process. And of course, calling for commitment and daily practice. Exodus 20:12. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land, and that the Lord your God, which the Lord your God gives you. All of the commandments all evolve out of the basic one. The Lord God is one. Every person lives in the one and is of the one. Every person, by the simple reason that they are an expression of God, deserves respect no matter what. No matter what. Now, you might look at this as the masculine and the feminine. You might look at it as thoughts and feelings. That you honor your thoughts and feelings. That you honor what is going on in you so that you might move through these desert places in your life. I once heard that said by someone else that said, everyone deserves respect. And I thought, well, I know people that don't deserve respect. Now, did you hear that? What was that? Second commandment? Just broken? Yes. Yes. You know, everyone deserves respect by the simple thing that each person has the divine within. They may have it very well covered. You may not see it, but it is there, and you have to have faith that it is there, not only for yourself, but for them as well. Because when you have that faith, you have the ability to help to raise them up. The spiritual fulfillment of this commandment lies in our reverence for our Creator, in whom the father quality of wisdom is joined with the mother quality of love. The masculine and the feminine attributes are likewise present in each one of us. For in the image of God created him, male and female, he created them. This brings balance to our spiritual nature. This brings balance. Exodus 20:13, you shall not kill. To obey this commandment spiritually, we are to be careful not to destroy another's courage or faith. We work to turn our anger into love. Consider the lowly oyster. The oyster, when it gets a grain of sand within it, works very hard to get it out. And when it can't get it out, it begins to cover it with something beautiful. And from that comes a beautiful pearl, one of the most beautiful things around. And when, it works to make something that is different, and it turns that irritation away. It turns it into something else. And when we have something that is irritating us, causing a reaction of anger, just remember that it is totally impractical and uneconomical to indulge in the kind of killing thoughts that will eventually come back to us. Be careful what we say. Realize that the reaction proves that there is something out of order in consciousness, and get to work setting it right. If we find that we are angry, there's something out of order in our own consciousness, and we must begin to set it right. Exodus 20:14, you shall not commit adultery. Let me tell you, there is just a whole lot to this one. Just a lot to it. And I'm just really hitting on the surface of it. But adulteration is to take something and make it impure. To take something pure and to make it impure. And whenever we see less in another person or ourselves than the Christ, we are committing adultery. The act of adultery in us is a weakening or an adulteration of one's own self-worth. And it may be applied in a much broader sense as dealing with the adulteration of truth in the many unthinking ways that we can do it. It often comes out of just misunderstanding truth and not seeing it as purely as it has been given. All of these laws, all of these commandments have both the moral and the spiritual viewpoint. Exodus 20:15, you shall not steal. It is ignorance of the law of compensation that leads people on that endless round of trying to get something for nothing, hoping for the lucky break or finding the shortcut to advancement. You shall not take or hold something that does not belong to you by right of consciousness. If you receive it and it is not by right of consciousness, you will eventually lose it in some way. Dictators rob people of freedom. Strong-minded people rob others of free will. Many a doting mother or father robs their child the right to make the decision of how to live their own lives as they choose. Exodus 20:16, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. We shall behold all people in truth as the divine beings they are. Criticism, condemnation, and judging by appearances are always a violation of the 9th commandment. Exodus 20:17, you shall not covet. You have been observing these commandments, that they have many layers. Looking at them from a strictly moral point of view, they are codes for improving conduct and also for changing character. Covet means to desire, to long for, to want passionately, which in itself is not bad. It's really not. If we want that as, if we covet, if we passionately desire a realization of oneness with God, that's a pretty good thing of knowing that. But to covet the kingdom of God and to desire it with all of our hearts is to be in the flow. And that's a good thing too, an important state of consciousness. It is when we believe that things of the world can give us the satisfaction we long for. This is the delusion of life. to think that someone or something can give us what we want when all it does is close off the flow that we so desperately seek. So let us keep in mind these 10 commandments and realize that they are the 10 commandments, not the 10 suggestions. And we have merely touched upon them this morning, but I strongly recommend that you study and you contemplate them on your own. They are valuable lessons in raising our consciousness. I also strongly urge you to join the Unity Basics class starting Tuesday night at 7 to really lock these things in, to really understand what they mean, to have a broader view of unity than what you get on Sunday morning, because this is only a taste. It's only a taste. Much of today's lesson was taken from How to Break the 10 Commandments by Eric Butterworth and Let There Be Light by Elizabeth Sand Turner. For a deeper understanding and a look at them, I would suggest that you order them from the bookstore. And that is the end of the commercial for today. God bless you.